You're listening to the RTI Press Pass powered by Rocky Top Insider.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast. Today is Wednesday, January 14th. It's a nice day outside here in Knoxville, and we got a lot of things to talk about here on the Tennessee football side of things. My name is Rick Butler, back from a quick absence as I was a bit under the weather last week, but back in store for you today. Joined by my two good friends. I think you know them well, certainly. They did a great job of putting things back together in place last week. And if I can just take a quick moment to brag on them, the transfer portal has been open for, about 12 days or so at this point. And these two guys, I don't think that you can really find better coverage than what they've been doing from a Tennessee perspective. These guys are talking to agents. They're tracking the movements. They are doing everything that you need to be doing and you need to know about where Tennessee football is in their transfer portal saga. In the top right of the corner, if you're watching on YouTube, that is Ryan Shumpert. And in the middle of the screen right in front of you, that is Ryan Sylvia. Good morning to you both. I hope you are doing well. Shump, I'll start with you, man. You and I were up late last night covering a double overtime game in the Food City Center. Tennessee beats Texas A&M. We might get into a little bit of basketball talk at the end of the show here today. But how are you doing? It was a late night for both of us getting that thing wrapped up. Nearly a 3-hour game for the Tennessee Volunteers.
Not nearly 3 hours and 2 minutes.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
It was a 3-hour game, and I make a joke about it being like a football game in a length standpoint, but no football games are actually 3 hours these days anymore. So, no, a crazy one, and thankfully not a 9 p.m. tip. We might be recording a little bit later if it was.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Sylvia, you are juggling plenty on your plate as well. A lot of Lady Vols coverage as that conference season is now moving into place. And then also, again, like I mentioned a second ago, the transfer portal has been fantastic. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm just happy that you pulled through from your illness. We were giving you good vibes on the pod while you missed, and keep fighting. Don't give up. And we're glad you pulled through and you can rejoin us this week. But I'm doing good.
I'm just appreciative that I wasn't pronounced dead. That has happened a couple of times so far in the last, I would say, 4 to 5 months or so. So you guys, you took the right route with it. You said he's not dead yet. He is fighting. Keep fighting. Keep the good fight going.
Don't give up.
But I wasn't pronounced dead. So that does feel like a step in the right direction. At least when I heard that, I knew myself I could continue pushing forward. There was still a light at the end of the tunnel. Not the bright light, but a returning light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. So you guys gave me optimism last week that this guy's not dead. He can come back from this. Keep the fight.
You're absolutely welcome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't think that there's too much going on that people are intrigued on hearing about besides the transfer portal. That's obviously going to be the big topic of conversation here today. We're going to be moving into the transfer portals talk here in just a couple minutes. And then, like I said a second ago, near the end of the show, if we have time for it, we might dive into some Tennessee basketball news. If you want the latest Tennessee basketball news, though, you got to be checking out the Rocky Top Insider Rim Runner Show. That's with Ryan Shumpert right here and Bob Baskerville on the Rocky Top Insider network of podcasts. They come to you late in the week, pretty much around Thursday each week. Sometimes it might be a little bit different, but those guys are talking for an hour each week about the latest news and notes going on in not only the Tennessee basketball world, not only the SEC basketball world, but of course, college basketball as a whole. Can't recommend it enough. Rocky Top Insider Rim Runner podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and you can find it on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube page. Speaking of the Rocky Top Insider YouTube page, if you're watching this video there right now, hey, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything going on in the world of Tennessee athletics. We've got press conferences in the postgame for Tennessee men's and women's basketball. We've got our different network of shows with the RTI Lowdown, RTI Pancakes and Bacon, Rim Runner, and Press Pass. You can find all of those shows that as they come out throughout the week and anything else that's going on as we get to it. Certainly Tennessee football in the spring is going to be wrapping up here ramping up, in the next couple months. So make sure you are subscribed to the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel. And then, of course, go check out our great friends over at WATE. We'll talk to you more about them later. You can go and download the Smart TV app, WATE 6 Plus, on your smart TV, and you can stay connected to all of the local news and sports news going on right here in East Tennessee. That all being said, though, let's jump into the vortex that is the transfer portal, as there's a ton of different directions that we can go with, coming from where you guys, talked about things last week. But let's start with the quarterback situation. Sylvia, I know you've been covering this. You wrote an article talking about a little bit of the potential guys that Tennessee could go after. Kind of talk to me about what's been going on this week and where you see Tennessee right now with that whole quarterback conversation in the portal.
Yeah, it felt like Tennessee was a little late to the game to get in on Sam Leavitt, and then trying to pull Ty Simpson out, and then maybe toying with Bo Prabula to see if that was an option. Now all those options are off the table. Ty Simpson's officially signed the paperwork out of the NFL. Sam Leavitt's officially signed with LSU, and Bo Prabula, just kind of an hour or two after Sam Leavitt news broke, officially signed with Virginia. So now it is the question of where Tennessee goes. It doesn't feel like there's a big fish for them to get anymore. Maybe they can, through the third party, like they did this last spring, try to lure someone into the portal, talk to the agents and do those kind of the legal avenues that aren't the, for sure tampering, but the legal tampering, I guess you could call it, and see if they can lure someone in. I don't know which big fish are really even out there that you could, physically or theoretically do that with. So it feels like it's probably going to be the two freshmen and redshirt freshman George McIntyre, true freshman Faison Brandon, who are both really talented, but true freshmen or no experience, I should say. And maybe you try to add another guy to the mix, and you try to get a guy that can come in and compete from a lower level that's maybe still in the portal. But then you go down the list of guys that are in the portal right now, and you're like, okay, well, if that's the case, let's see who's in the portal at all to begin with. And it's just not a lot of guys that even really fit the mold at all for what Tennessee would look for. You'd think they'd look for someone that has played, not someone that is towards the end of their career and hasn't really played much. You'd think they'd look for someone that is older, because there's no point of bringing in a third young player when you already have two really talented ones that you like a lot. So you go down the list, and it's like there's only one or two that really fit the mold. I think a lot of Tennessee fans have gravitated towards Dickens from Western Carolina. He's on the shorter side. He's got 2 years of eligibility. He threw for 1 million yards in 9 games last year, but it doesn't seem like Tennessee's, reached out at this point. We'll have to see, I guess, what they do, but they theoretically need a third guy in that room. So I'm curious what avenue they go to do that. A guy like Dickens would make a lot of sense, though, I think, if that is the route they want to go to, is to add a lower level transfer that played a lot of football already.
Yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head. Most of the guys that are out there at this point are guys that don't have starting experience. And, the former 4-star recruit who went to Power 5 school and, wasn't able to win the starting job.
It's a lot of Jake Merklingers.
That's a great way of
Jake
putting it.
Merklinger.
Yeah, including Jake Merklinger. Jake Merklinger is the Jake Merklinger of the transfer portal quarterbacks.
Yes.
If you look down the list, there's the top 3 ranked guys are Longstreet from USC, who was just a true freshman, Grunkmeyer, who was just a redshirt freshman who played a bit for Penn State, probably going to Virginia Tech. And then it's Jake Merklinger. It's just a lot of Jake Merklingers in the portal.
Yeah.
Right now.
And to Sylvia, to what you said a second ago, you looked through this list, and I encourage people to go check it out on RockyTopInsider.com. Just going down the list: eligibility 4 years, eligibility 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. It's a lot of that, and you're right. I don't necessarily think that, with the two guys that Tennessee has in the room right now, it doesn't strike me as kind of the direction that Tennessee wants to prioritize going.
No, I agree. It just looked like you could do that, just from the standpoint of you need a body, like you need a quarterback. So, even if they don't, it just feels like it'd be a hard sell, because I think about it, like you bring in one of those guys, they're probably not going to play. Like you feel like you're going to go with the guys that you've more hand selected in McIntyre and Faison Brandon, but you need a body, so maybe you can convince one of those guys. And I think there will be an opportunity to compete. If one of those guys comes in and is the best quarterback in camp, I would think Tennessee would go with them. So that's where it's difficult. Dickens, I like that because of the experience. There's a ton of question marks with him. 5'11", 180, playing in the SoCon. How does that transition work exactly? That would be certainly a major step in competition. I will say, to get off topic, I don't know if I'd call it his worst performance of the year. His lowest passing yards of the year. Only 220 against my Furman Paladins. Now, ignore the fact that they won that game 52-7, and I believe had a pick six and maybe another special teams touchdown. Only 220 passing yards. Only one of two games he played where he threw for less than 300 yards.
Well, guess what? Revenge game then, if he does pick Tennessee.
That's true.
Opportunity.
That's true in the opener.
Great point.
Yeah, so it's it's just not a great situation. I guess I'll pose this to either of y'all. Maybe Sylvia, you want to take the first stab at it? Like, we're not completely in the rear view of this process yet, but like, where do you think Tennessee went wrong? Where would you critique them, I guess, the most for how they've handled things in the portal?
Yeah, I mean, if we're just looking at the quarterback position,
just quarterback position.
Yeah, I guess it was a little puzzling that you wanted to because it felt like LSU still at the end of the day gave a bigger offer to Sam Levitt. It didn't feel like Tennessee. It seems like has a number for the quarterback position that it could go up to, and that they're willing to go up to. And I guess LSU passed that number. So maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't matter anyway. But it feels like if you were going to extend that number to Sam Levitt, it was strange how long it took to get him on campus, how drawn out that process. Like, he's over at Kentucky first, and there's a lot of buzz there, and then that falls off the table, and now he's at LSU, and then it just kind of out of nowhere, it's like, okay, well, now Tennessee's all of a sudden trying to put something together late. The timing of that felt weird. I didn't mind, the Ty Simpson saga. If that's even a possibility, sure, go offer him through those third parties, to throw that number out there and see if that's enough to entice him. Obviously, a Tennessee kid who has ties and all that stuff. So, maybe you had a chance, but you can't bank on that. And then you go to Sam Levin, you can't bank on that. And then you go to Bo Perbula, who, maybe would be better than anyone else Tennessee would bring in at this point, but still wasn't, the most enticing option to have in the portal anyway. And by the time that we're talking about this now, or even by the time that the Sam Levitt stuff and the Bo Perbula stuff was happening, it was like, man, a lot of the options that worked, that not even necessarily the Sorsbys and the Hoovers of the world, who also would have commanded a lot of money, but even some of the lower ranked options, like a Jaden Craig from Harvard that was thrown around by some people in the offseason. Like, he signed with TCU by that point. So a lot of the options that would have made a lot of sense, that wouldn't even necessarily be that expensive, they were just off the table by the time you found out you weren't getting Ty Simpson, you weren't getting Sam Levitt. And I guess it's just the timing of it is the biggest critique I have. Is now we're sitting here and there's just no options left on the table.
Yeah, I think there was I guess I would say I wonder how much like the Joey uncertainty played into that.
Yeah. I mean, that just felt like the whole season, though. It was like, man, that'd be nice, but I just can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean that as an excuse for them. I think that'd be more of like a mishandling of the situation is kind of that should have been just like a complete no planning around him coming back. If he ends up getting eligibility and you don't have a quarterback, great. If you do, then he can enter the transfer portal and go somewhere else. Like, it's not like Joey played so well last season that you just had to have him.
Yeah.
So, look, like, I guess the Ty Simpson thing, I don't love. That just always felt like a pipe dream. I don't know how much that slowed down their pursuit of other quarterbacks. But again, when you talk about the Sam Levitt stuff not really ratcheting up until about the same time Ty Simpson declared, I can't remember which one of those things happened. It was last Tuesday when the Levitt visit got scheduled, and I think it maybe was that Tuesday or that Wednesday morning when Ty Simpson declared for the draft. Like, that, I don't know. To me, that felt foolish. It felt a little bit like Carnell Tate last offseason. And look, Tennessee ended up being fine at receiver, so I guess I can't really use this to be critical of them too much. But it was like, it felt like all of Tennessee's eggs in the transfer portal receiver basket were in Carnell Tate going in the portal, and then that, I mean, even getting him when he got in the portal to me didn't even seem that realistic. So, I don't love that. And then to me, I guess the biggest thing is, like, you did have a backup plan. You got Bo Prabula. I cannot pronounce this dude's name.
Prabula. Like Bueller.
Beulah.
Yeah.
It has me in a chokehold. You got him on a visit, and you had a backup plan. It's like you can't whiff on the backup plan. Like you have to then go. Because again, it feels like a lot of like line in the sands were drawn, Sylvia, on like we're not going to pay this guy this much because he's not worth it. And yeah, they're right. Sam Levitt's not worth what he got.
No, absolutely.
I have like tons of questions about if Sam Levitt's even going to be good. To be honest, but it's just it's market value, and again, it feels like maybe the same thing. Look, I don't mean to be disrespectful to you, Ryan Sylvia. I don't mean to be disrespectful to Tony Elliott. If the money was the same, I think you're probably getting them over Virginia. Like it clearly feels like you just weren't willing to pay enough. And like, again, I don't doubt that he's going to get more than he's worth at Virginia. I don't doubt that because he wasn't very good at Missouri last year. But that's your backup plan. You got to find a way to get him. You have to find a way to pay what it takes to get him. Not that Tennessee hasn't invested in the defensive side, but it's not like since all this went down on Monday night, we've seen Tennessee just throw a bunch of money on the defensive side of the ball and pivot elsewhere. It just feels like they're in somewhat of a holding pattern.
Yeah, that's with Prabula too, though. Those guys are tough pitches because you would think that if you're going the route of Bo Prabula, you still wouldn't promise him the starting job. Like you wouldn't be like, hey, you're QB1. You're going into a quarterback battle with George McIntyre and Faison Brandon. For a guy with 1 year of eligibility left, maybe even if the numbers are the same monetarily, you do just go, hey, I got the sure thing over at Virginia. I'll be QB1 over there. It's in the ACC. They were just in the ACC championship game. Like they got something rolling if you think that, and you go that route instead, just because it's more of a surefire thing. You don't have to enter yourself into some big quarterback battle. So I'm curious how much of that plays into it with guys like him. And, I don't know. It's a situation where it could be somewhat of a tough pitch because of the two young guys in the room. But that's why I like a guy like Dickens. And again, there hasn't been anything that's come out or heard anything that makes you think that Tennessee seriously looked at him. But a guy like that with 2 years of eligibility from a lower level, it feels like a win-win where you can say, hey, you come in and compete for this job. It can go three ways. One, you win it and you're fantastic. Awesome. You're gone to the draft next year. And that's the most unrealistic option, but still the best option. You're gone to the draft or whatever. Congratulations. What a success. And next year you can go to George McIntyre, Faison Brandon. Option number two is he wins it and he's pretty good, or maybe he's, somewhat bad, whatever. And you move on from him next year. But now he has a year of tape at the SEC level. He can go and try to find somewhere else with that. Third option is he doesn't win the quarterback competition at all, but he's still a guy who's in the room. You have a third option who's played football. You have that body that you need. And now he's got a year of SEC experience on the bench. He can have the practice film cut up for him, whatever, and then he can go to a group of 5 or something like that from there. There feels like a win-win no matter what option that would end up like. And so that feels like the best case scenario is find a guy with 2 years of eligibility who's willing to come in and fight for a quarterback battle. And if he loses, it's not like his career is over and it was some huge risk. He still has a year and he can go somewhere else. That feels like the best path. But again, there's so little names out there. Like he's the only guy I found that even fits that mold. Everyone else is either way too young or way too old, or is maybe has 2 years of eligibility, but has played like 10 snaps of college football to this point. And what's the point of even, I guess, just for the body of it, but what's the point of bringing that in?
Yeah, for the body of it will be the only thing. The last thing I have on the quarterback, and it just to reiterate your point, Sylvia, I thought it was interesting, and Nick Kelly at AL.com's done a really good job, reporting about the NIL offers Ty Simpson got. And I think Chris Lowe had this nugget yesterday after talking to Ty. He was like, got $4 million offers from Ole Miss and Tennessee, and then when Miami missed out on Levitt or knew they were going to miss out on Levitt, they came back in with it was 6 something crazy amount, and then there was like a note in there or a nugget in that was like Ole Miss was willing to go to that number 2. And it didn't say Tennessee wasn't, but Tennessee was not mentioned about willing to go over 4, to where, again, it feels like maybe Tennessee just doesn't have the money. Maybe they don't have, the money to do that. But it does feel like there's a line in the sand drawn and a line that Tennessee just wasn't going to cross, and how much they were willing to pay for a quarterback. And, I think that if that is the case, it certainly has not. It certainly has hurt them in their pursuit.
And that goes back to what we talked about last week too, where it's like you already have so much money in that quarterback room between Faison and George, and not probably combined, it still wouldn't even touch the $4 million that you're theoretically throwing around to these other guys, but still a lot of money. So, do you want to have what would probably be the most expensive quarterback room between three guys in the country by spending $4, $5, $6 million on someone, or would you rather just trust your evaluations of George McIntyre and Faison Brandon and go to a younger guy who's inexperienced and go that route instead? It seems like that's the option, but I don't hate it either. Like, I think you're probably worse off this season with the Faison Brandon or George McIntyre than you are with a Sam Levitt or a top name like that. Compared to Bo Pribula, I mean, who knows? Again, it's not like Bo Pribula was great at Missouri last year. He got hurt, sure, but he had one or two good games. He killed Kansas. He had a great game against them. Outside of that, it's not like he was doing great. There's a reason, I guess I should say, that he's in the transfer portal right now and not returning to Missouri next year, and that Missouri's going with Austin Simmons next year instead. So I don't hate going to one of the young guys. You're probably a little worse this year, but again, what you talked about was, well, go spend that money you didn't spend on Sam Levitt, that you didn't spend on Ty Simpson, and go throw it into the defense. Maybe that's some of the money that Chaz Coleman got. Maybe that went from that fund in some ways, but it doesn't seem like yet that they've still landed as many big fish as you maybe theoretically could, if that is kind of still money on the table that you are willing to spend elsewhere. You could really piece together a really good defense and help out one of those two young guys.
Yeah, for sure. And, Pribula, I think you're right. It would have been a competition, but to me, you would have gone into that competition thinking he's the favorite. Whereas now, we'll see. We'll see what Tennessee ends up doing, but it's hard to imagine we go in this competition not viewing George McIntyre as the favorite.
Yeah. Quarterback was. Go ahead.
I'll say I'll believe Josh Heupel starting a true freshman at quarterback when it happens, because he's very he likes his veterans. He likes his experienced guys back there. But I guess it's at this point it's like George McIntyre versus Faison Brandon. It's not like either of them have too much experience. It's just George McIntyre's been in the facility for a year and Faison hasn't. So
yeah.
Besides Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton in 2021, probably the most open quarterback battle. In between that one, I would say more open than this past year with Joey Aguilar and Jake Merklinger. That one felt the whole time like Joey's job to lose.
Yeah, I would agree. Quarterback was always going to be one of the big conversations of the offseason, whether it went one direction with, hey, look at this brand new shiny toy as a starter that Tennessee has going forward, or what it's kind of shaping up to be what it is now. Hey, let's talk about another quarterback competition for a second straight year. But like you alluded to, a second ago, Ryan, it does feel a lot more open, and it's obviously doesn't feel unfinished yet, depending on what Tennessee can do with the rest of the portal. January 16th is the day that the portal, closes for people to enter their names in. But then, of course, there's still some movement that can happen around there. So stay tuned to Rocky Top Insider, find out kind of what the latest is with Tennessee and their pursuit for another quarterback. Man, it also just kind of reminds me of our conversation, Ryan, that you and I had after the Music City Bowl, of saying, would have loved to have seen a little bit of George McIntyre, in this game, or just at some point to kind of have a better feel of what things are going to feel like going into spring ball. But either way, it looks like that's what we're shaping up for. So whether it be spring ball, whether it be fall ball, or anything that happens over the summer, it sounds like we're going to be talking about a quarterback competition heading into the 9 SEC game slate for the 2026 schedule. All right. So since you guys talked last week, there's certainly been an influx of Tennessee additions from the transfer portal and kind of a raid of the former Penn State defense. Look, when Jim Knowles and members of his staff, an Anthony Poindexter, were brought into Knoxville, you knew that there was a likelihood that Tennessee was going to go after some of these former Nittany Lion players. Obviously, highly touted, even though the Nittany Lions season did not work out very well last season, but highly touted players, talented players, and you knew that some of them were going to be a possibility, some maybe more than others. Since then, since you guys have talked last week, there's been an influx of those Penn State players into the Tennessee football program. Started with defensive lineman Xavier Gilliam, who kind of sent out the bat signal, if you will. I guess maybe the Penn State signal into the Knoxville sky of saying, hey, come, come all ye seeking home. And it worked for the most part. He mentioned Amari Campbell, the linebacker who eventually committed and signed with Tennessee. He mentioned Dewan Lane, the safety who eventually committed and I believe signed with Tennessee. And then the big fish, Chaz Coleman, the edge rusher that comes in at a very much needed position for Tennessee, the former 5-star recruit, a 5-star prospect in the transfer portal, according to 247, one of the top true freshmen in the league, in the nation last year. Even though he missed a little bit of time with injury, he's kind of the big fish that Tennessee gets to bring in there. So a lot of familiarity from that former Penn State contingent with Poindexter, with Knowles, with a lot of these players right here. But and that wasn't all of them, but you saw a major Penn State raid that basically happened over the weekend, again, with the kind of that crown jewel being Chaz Coleman on the edge.
Yeah, for sure. There were a lot of immediate names when these guys entered the portal, as Tennessee being a team to watch. And look, Tennessee needed reinforcements just about everywhere. So it's been big, and I think you have to like the guys Tennessee got too. For the most part, all 4 of them played major roles for Penn State last year. 2 of them were starters the entire year in Campbell and Gillum, and one of the guys who wasn't a starter the entire year is a guy what's the number 5 or number 6 player in the portal, I think, according to the 24/7 and Chaz Coleman. So that feels like the biggest fish Tennessee's gotten to date. Just when you're talking about LSU in there, Alabama or Ohio State in there. South Carolina was pushing for a visit. I know late had maybe an in-home visit, so that was a big time battle, and I think as much as a gamble as any that Tennessee's made in the portal to date, I would say. I don't know what you think about that, Sylvia, just from the standpoint of he's a guy that I'm sure cost a pretty penny because of how highly touted he is, but hasn't played a ton of football. Has flashed when he's played, but it's not like he's been extremely productive. But that's the big name. That's the biggest guy Tennessee's gotten to date. And certainly with what Tennessee loses at that leader spot, the Vols need him to have a big year.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't done anything in his career yet, and that everyone's at that point at some point. And I think I heard someone say on the Penn State side of things that they felt like he was at the same point that Micah Parsons was at the point of his career. Like if you lined up their trajectories, they were at a similar point, whatever that means. I mean, if that's true, that's obviously great news for Tennessee. Like Micah Parsons was one of the best defenders in college football by the time he was done. But he hasn't proven anything yet. So it is a risky play because you have to assume that was an expensive haul, probably the most expensive one of the transfer portal cycle. You've lost everyone else in that position room. So you're trusting freshmen and redshirt freshmen. And then you bring in Jordan Norman, who feels like a valuable piece just because you don't know exactly what you're going to get from Chaz Coleman. But I am curious. It's not as much of a surefire like, oh, man, you got this guy who was extremely productive at a high level. It feels pretty safe to say you can just plug and play and he'll be extremely productive. I think he'll be good, but maybe it'll be good as in what Jordan Ross was last year. Jordan Ross was a 5-star recruit. He didn't play much as a freshman. As a sophomore this past year, he wasn't bad, but it's not like he took over games. It's not like he was the best edge rusher on the team. And the expectation was maybe that then his junior year he'd be really good. So maybe Chaz Coleman's get him on campus this year. It's going to be expensive. Hope he does play really well, but then maybe even in 2027 he's really good. But then that's a whole other issue of everyone's on a 1-year contract essentially. So who knows where he'll be, where anyone will be by 2027. So it is an interesting scenario, but a guy that I do think was necessary to grab and to get in the room. So I do like the expensive move to go bring him in. I think it's worth it in the long run.
For sure. And Tennessee, you got to take some gambles on some of these guys to try to get some high-level guys, especially on defensive line, because Tennessee just doesn't really have, maybe you'd say Davon Hobbs, but really doesn't have any guys that you look at returning or like that guy could be a difference maker for Tennessee next year. So I think it's worthwhile to take those gambles on some players, even if it's someone that you're betting on potential more so than the production you've seen so far.
Yeah, you look at their defensive line, and on let's start at Leo, I guess. You have Chaz Coleman and Jordan Norman at the top, then Christian Gass is probably your third guy. Okay, I don't hate that room. It's not going to be the best in the SEC, but I don't hate that room. especially if Chaz Coleman can reach, even part of his potential. Defensive end still scares me. Tyree Weathersby, Marion Dye, and then probably one of the freshmen, probably Carter Gooden. That I still feel like you need to add a guy in. They haven't really had much involved at defensive end yet. So I'm curious, maybe they really like those freshmen. Maybe they really like what Tyree Weathersby can become as a redshirt junior next year, what Marion Dye can be. But that is a very unproven room as well. And then defensive tackle, as you mentioned, Davon Hobbs. And then behind him, it's kind of Xavier Gilliam, Nathan Robinson. What are those two guys going to bring you? One of them will be, the quote unquote starter. The other one's still going to play a lot, even if he isn't the starter. Then after that, it's a lot of, Isaiah Campbell, Ethan Utley, two unproven guys after their freshman year that were highly recruited, and then a list of true freshmen. So it's just a lot of guys that you go down the list, and it's like, man, you have the potential. You see why you're on the roster and why the expectation is you can play at a high level, but you just haven't had to do it yet. And so you're just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that a handful of them will pan out, because if not, you're going to be in trouble on defense, because it is just a lot of either new faces or unproven faces.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm glad you mentioned the Jordan Norman, ad. I like that one. Just from it's almost a little bit of a reverse of Chaz Coleman, where he has a little more production, not at the highest of levels, but Tulane in a solid league in the American, had 6 sacks last year, and where Coleman feels like extremely high ceiling, and not to say his floor is super low, but just a big gap between what a ceiling and floor could be for Tennessee next year. I feel like you kind of know what you're going to get with Jordan Norman, so that's an addition that I like a lot, and I think made a lot of sense. Is kind of a ulterior option for the Vols there.
And here's a look at Jordan Norman. You mentioned played at Tulane, so not the highest level, but he played Ole Miss twice, and he played Duke while he was there. If you look at the Duke game week 3, 56.9 PFF grade, so put as much stock into PFF as you want, but a below average PFF grade for that Duke game. Then the following week they play at Ole Miss, and he has one of his best games of the season and registers a 74.8 grade, which is really good. But then in I guess this would have been the college football playoff game against Ole Miss, 52.1, so a below average grade there. So he's been, a little all over the place, kind of boomer bust, I guess, if you're just looking at PFF grades. Like you look at Temple and he's at 83.4, and you're like, man, if you can obviously replicate that type of production, but against a higher level team, and so maybe the grade or the production drops a little bit, but even then that's really good. And then you look at like a game at Memphis and he's at 58.9, or some of these other games where his grade isn't as high. And again, put as much stock as you want into PFF, but a little more boomer bust if you're just looking at that, but still someone that if you have the boom potential, throw him back there with Chaz Coleman, and hopefully, at least one of the two can have a very productive season for you.
Yeah, for sure. Another guy Tennessee adds this week is TJ Metcalf. I guess we can get into more of what he's done. 2 years at Arkansas, 1 year at Michigan. To me, the big question there is, he played mostly not only star, but mostly star last year. Does it feel to you, Sylvia, like he ends up more at safety for Tennessee? Obviously, Tennessee landed Quay Moss, who I think we'd all kind of penciled in as the star.
Yeah, I mean, that still feels like the best route to me would be to go Quay Moss at star. I don't know if this is what they'll do with Joel Wyatt, the true freshman. I love him as a star, because then he's kind of almost a hybrid linebacker at times. Like you just kind of have that versatile piece that can almost fit both molds, because he is just so big. I would not mind that at all if you had Quay Moss as your starter, kind of in that Jalen McMurray role from last year, where he's playing 2/3 of the snaps and maybe a third of the snaps. You get a freshman Joel Wyatt in to get him some valuable experience. And maybe he does move back to safety by the end of his career, which felt like what the plan mostly was with him by the end of his career at least. But I wouldn't mind that at all. We'll see what they want to do with Wyatt. But I still like Quay Moss as the star. It feels like TJ Metcalf's probably going to move back to safety. He has more experience at safety than Quay Moss, and both of them are able to play it. So I guess you do have the two options. Maybe you go into spring camp and you don't know exactly, and you try to play them both at multiple positions and figure it out from there. But at least I guess you do have the two options, and you can see who fits which mold better. And then you bring DeJuan Lane, who's only played safety at Penn State. So that's someone that's going to be back there. And then you still have Idris Farouk, and you lose Caleb Beasley, but that feels more like a symptom of you're upgrading the personnel at safety rather than you're losing someone you really wanted to hold on to. So it's not the end of the world there. I really like how that room is forming just because you do have those multiple options. But to answer your question, yeah, I feel like Quay Moss is still, at least to me, the favorite to play star. And then you figure out between Lane, Metcalf, and Farouk, which two are going to be your starting safeties.
Yeah.
I think too with the Caleb Beasley one is a good point just from, I mean, I think what you said is accurate, but I believe we talked about this last week. Beasley felt like a potential backup option at star because of the fact that he came in as a corner and played safety last year. So just kind of a natural in between where he could help there. Just because, as we talked about, Tennessee has no snaps back from star the entire season. So you need somebody else to at least be able to play that, even if Quay Moss is the starter. So the versatility is a good add there. I'd still like to see Tennessee add another defensive back in the portal, probably a corner. To me, feels like the bigger need at this point, just because you have Trey Petit's a 3 right now. And it's not even that I don't think Trey Petit could beat a 3, but I don't even know who the 4 would be, essentially. So you just like to have two more capable bodies as backups. Someone else in addition to Petit.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their visit list right now. Aaron Scott from Ohio State is supposed to be on campus tomorrow, true cornerback. So that would make a lot of sense. And the other defensive back they've been tied to, Conrad, Hussey from Oregon State and Florida State. He played a lot of nickelback last year as well, so maybe that's an option to play some backup nickelback. He's also capable of playing safety too, so kind of fits that same mold of a Quay Moss and TJ Metcalf. Now he's been on campus before, so maybe that's a little bit ruled out just because of the addition of TJ Metcalf, and the fit doesn't make as much sense. But he's still uncommitted and a previous visitor, so I guess someone to keep an eye on as this thing unfolds. But I would agree. I mean, it feels like if you were able to land like an Aaron Scott, maybe that irks Ty Redmond a little bit, who felt like he just finished a good freshman year and deserves to start next year. And maybe that boots him out, or we'll see exactly what happens. Or maybe you're able to actually rotate 3 guys a little bit more when the last handful of seasons, it's really just been 2 guys for 99% of the snaps, and you go from there. But it would, just from a number standpoint, again, feel necessary to add another cornerback in, because you're right. You look again at the depth chart of the roster. Ian Lee's going to start. Ty Redmond's going to start on the current roster. Trey Petit, you would think, would be that third guy, which, again, would have been nice if he would have played a lot in the Music City Bowl and you could have gotten some in-game reps and all that stuff. But, I digress from that. And then Timothy Merritt, Zay Anderson would probably be the 2 guys after them. So that's a sophomore and a true freshman who haven't really played any football at all. That feels dangerously close to being a similar situation you were in last year, where you're an injury away from a true freshman who has no experience getting thrown into the fire, which worked out by the end of the year. But like that Georgia game early in Ty Redmond's tenure, he was just getting picked on out there, and you can't blame the guy. It was like his 3rd week of college football. So it is a little scary if you don't add another corner into that mix.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because that was what I was just looking up. On this day, a year ago, you thought Tennessee was going to be Tennessee's 2 starting cornerbacks played 19 snaps the entire season. So, again, that's some really bad injury luck. You don't think that's going to happen, but it's also fresh on the mind. It was, at least when it happened last year, I guess or at least when it was reported last year, I guess it happened probably a few days before. But it was January 15th last year when Jermon McCoy reported tore his ACL, and it's January 14th today. So, right at that same spot.
Hey, TJ's got a brother, right? Who's also in the transfer portal, who is a cornerback, Tevis.
Yes, and they transferred once already together. So
yeah,
this one wasn't a package deal as much, I guess, because one's committed and the other one entered the portal like the day before. He came in after TJ took the visit. But he does have a brother. And he is a cornerback. So doesn't look like he has played much in his career. But if you're just looking for another body in the room that's at least have some experience, then sure. I don't think you turn that down at all.
By the way, the Metcalf brothers are, including TJ, who committed to Tennessee on Tuesday morning, the cousins of one DK Metcalf.
I was wondering. I was curious.
Yes, former Ole Miss superstar, and obviously now one of the big-bodied receivers in the NFL. So you've got some Metcalf connection there with TJ Tevis and the one DK Metcalf.
There you go.
See, it's a tough week for them. I guess TJ had to commit yesterday morning to get a little excitement
raise the spirits
after the loss on Monday night for DK.
Yeah, he had to. DK was because of injuries. DK ended up being my number one receiver in fantasy this year, and there were a couple booms, but nothing that was all that exciting. All right. Speaking of guys, just kind of real quick as we get into the final third of the podcast here. Speaking about guys who Tennessee could potentially add, and there were a couple more names that we didn't hit on that transferred to Tennessee over the weekend. Gavin Freeman, a wide receiver and return specialist from Oklahoma State, made his commitment over the weekend. Some of these, I can't remember how. I think that might have been the only one that we hadn't talked about between the Penn State guys and Metcalf.
I think the special teams guys, Cooper Ranvier, the kicker from Louisville, and then
that was my next question. Where was the kicker? Because Tennessee has filled their kicker need with Cooper Ranvier.
I think we mentioned him as a target last time, and then maybe later that night he committed. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Which is a good disclaimer that a lot of things that we could be saying could be, either wrapped up or figured out or gone in a different direction in no time at all. So Tennessee does add a couple of specialists. We'll see if the return specialist and the kicker, they make a big difference, but that is also something that happened over the week. All right, just kind of again, as I said a second ago, as we kind of move into the final third of the podcast here, we'll mention cornerback maybe being a potential place that you would like to see Tennessee add another one. Running back has been talked about as a potential place, but we'll see how intriguing or how I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but how interesting that spot looks with obviously Deshaun Bishop signing a new deal and returning to Tennessee. Speaking of another guy, by the way, who's signed a new deal, according to Pete Nakos and On3, that would be Braylon Staley. So he will be back with Tennessee in 2026. Are there any other positions that you guys have been looking around or hearing about where you feel like, hey, this might be a spot where Tennessee needs to add a body, maybe try to add an impact player, or at least just kind of keep an eye on with the portal remaining open for a little bit longer?
And we've hit on a couple of them. It just feels like about everywhere besides the linebacker on defense, some depth. If Tennessee added someone from a depth standpoint, but yeah, that makes sense that they did that. I would highlight strong side defensive end. It's a spot Tennessee seems pretty content. Like I don't feel like they've been linked to a ton of players there at this point. But really just edge on both sides. Would like to see Tennessee add a little more. And then I think running back is one they definitely will. They've been, just countless running backs throughout this process now.
Yeah.
But the two, more recent ones, the Jacoby Jackson kid from Florida who has played like 6 years of college football already. Not totally sure how he has any more eligibility. But has some SEC experience, visited over a weekend. I think that was maybe Sunday. And then the Gavin Sawchuk kid from Florida State's another one that has visited. So feels like Tennessee keeps kicking the tires with different running backs there. And I'd be pretty surprised if they don't end up adding one before all is said and done.
Yeah, you need to add one just from a numbers wise. Even if you don't want to rotate all the way up to 3, which they like to do. But even if you don't, you only have 3 scholarship guys in the room right now, and 2 of them are DeJuan Morris and Justin Baker are coming off their true freshman season. Now, I think DeJuan Morris factors in to be a guy they like and could be a third string guy who gets kind of the Peyton Lewis snap count from last year. But Justin Baker, I don't think is someone that they're ready to let loose and play a bunch right now. And then you're an injury away from him being your number 2 back. So they need to add someone in the room. Deshaun Bishop's your starting guy, which makes it tough, which is why I think it's been hard for them to land someone. They're not big fish hunting at running back. They're just trying to find a guy who fits into the mold and is okay to rotate. But how many guys, especially again, if it's your last year of eligibility and you're this old guy and you're like, all right, this is my last chance to make a big statement and to try to make my NFL draft stock go up or things like that. How much do you want to say, okay, I'm comfortable being the number 2 guy in this room? They really like Deshaun Bishop. Deshaun Bishop's your top running back. I'm number 2. I don't know how many guys you can get that are fully willing to do that. You just kind of need another Star Thomas. You need a guy who's comfortable in that role, who's older most likely and is okay to just play his last year and split snaps and take advantage when he has the hot hand. They'll find someone, I'm sure. It's just, like you've said, they're just in and out with running backs and giving their pitch. And it seems like there's been a few too that are like, yeah, I like it. I like the role. And then, maybe they start looking elsewhere. Maybe money talks elsewhere a little bit, or play time talks elsewhere a little bit, and you can't land that plane. So we'll see what they do there. Defensive tackle, still a spot I would like to see them add people at. They had the LSU kid, Walter Matheson, a couple days ago. I'm curious what that ends up looking like, or if they're able to bring any more defensive tackles in before the portal really closes up here. And then on the offensive line, it seems like they're interested in adding another guy too. And they have the West Virginia starting guard, Donovan Haslam, who got a little experience at tackle, but certainly feels more like a guard, and would probably compete to be a starter next year at the guard spot opposite of Wendell Moy, if he does commit to Tennessee. And then they offered a guy from UL Monroe, Tank McBroom. He's visiting Alabama. I haven't seen anything about him visiting. Yeah, I haven't seen anything about him visiting Tennessee yet, though. So I'm not sure how serious Tennessee's involved in that one, besides just a phone call and an offer. But he's a guy that played tackle at UL Monroe, but probably maybe even has the body of a guard. So it feels like that's more so where they're looking right now, is probably at the guard spot, knowing Jesse Perry can slide out to tackle, knowing you already brought in Ori Williams from LSU, who feels like a guy they like to start at right tackle next year, at least compete with Jesse Perry for that spot. So just interior offensive lineman, I guess, running back, the guy Shumper named, and then they're apparently hosting Pierce Spurlin, a tight end from Georgia, next week. We'll see if that shakes anything up on Tennessee's current roster, because they don't really have the need for a tight end, or if that's just, hey, we like this guy, he's coming back from a procedure, and we think he has some talent, and we can add him to the room and see what he brings to the table. We'll see how that plays out as well, but not necessarily a position of need right now, I guess, for tight end, given Ethan Davis looked really, really good by the end of the year. Jack Van Dorsler played a lot throughout the season. Deshaun Brain you really like as a pass-catching tight end. And then you have the two younger guys in Cole Harrison and Luca Wolf, who they just brought in this cycle as well.
Over under 4.5 more portal additions for Tennessee.
I want to say, I hope it's over for their sake, because you look at what the teams in the playoffs have done. They've all just loaded up on 20 guys a cycle. Let's see. I want to get a number exactly how many they have.
I believe it's 11 right now.
I believe it's 12. If you count,
I think it's 12.
If you count
the Blake Howard, the long snapper.
Okay, then 12.
So 12. One of them's a kicker. One of them's a guy who just wants to play all over special teams. The other one is your backup slot, who's probably going to be your returner. So really, 3 specialists you can kind of say in that room. Yeah. I'll say over. I think they find a way to get to 5 or 6 more guys, but I don't feel confident saying that at all.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just think you need to add bodies. It'll be interesting to see, both from Tennessee's perspective and then nationally, if we see a late influx of players enter the portal, maybe here later on Wednesday or on Thursday, the last day that the portal's open.
Yeah, I am very, even from Tennessee's perspective, you feel like it's all quiet right now. There hasn't been much action. Then Caleb Beasley pops in. Well, okay, that makes sense because they're adding safeties. I'm curious how many guys are still trying to figure out a new deal with their current teams. How many guys are sitting there waiting to see what their current teams does? And maybe you're a Tennessee guy and you're saying, hey, don't got an answer at quarterback or don't have an answer here or there. And I've been kind of waiting on that. And I'm upset. You saw with Mike Matthews last year where he was like, man, I don't really know what's going on. I'm going to kind of tiptoe into the portal a bit. And obviously, he ended up coming back. Ricky Gibson was the same way. There's a lot of guys that almost behind the scenes or even then it ends up being public are like, hey, I'm not 100% sure what's going on here. I'm almost ready to leave and then end up coming back. Whether that's Tennessee, whether that's other places and Tennessee benefits from it, I'm sure there's going to be some jaw-dropping news throughout college football over the next 48 hours or so.
Yep, that feels likely. If history has indicated anything, it's that it'll get a little bit crazy here when the portal ends.
Like Walker Howard back in the portal as we're recording, back to Ole Miss.
Welcome home.
Welcome back.
That's great. I'm looking for one thing real quick online that I had written about earlier this week, and I don't think I'm going to find it in time, but just kind of reading through the list, And in case you haven't been entirely following where Tennessee's outgoing players have landed, I'll run through some of these real quick. There will be, I believe at this time, 6 former Tennessee players who are wind up back on the Vols 2026 schedule. You've got Max Gilbert going to Arkansas, Ricky Gibson III going to Texas A&M. You've got Lance Hurd and Max Anderson going to Kentucky, and you've got Jordan Ross and William Satterwhite going to LSU. Those are the 6 guys who, at the time of this recording at least, are on Tennessee's 2026 schedule. We'll see where some other people land, and then just kind of going through the rest of the list. Backup defensive lineman Josh Shell's going to Central Florida. Jaden Lofton is going to Wisconsin. Bennett Warren, the former 4-star offensive tackle, is going to Minnesota. You've got Peyton Lewis, who's going over to Virginia, I guess, to play with Bro Prabula. Brendan Ains, Western Michigan. Jamal Wallace, Utah. And then one of the big ones that have come out in the last couple of days, Boot Carter, Chattanooga guy, is heading to Colorado to play under Deion Sanders. I don't think that, to the surprise of too many, Vanderbilt was, I guess, maybe an option at one point. I think it was reported that he took a visit over there, but ultimately Boot Carter ends up where a lot of people thought that he might have been heading, and they get a deal done with Deion Sanders. So that's a quick look at where some of the Tennessee guys are going. Marcus Gorey Jr. And then there's a couple of guys who I think have gone to some of the smaller in-state schools. Sylvia, you wrote about a couple of these yesterday, so I cannot remember all of them off the top of my head, but I know Marcus Gorey Jr. was one of those guys. I know Tommy Winton was one of those guys, if you can, remember any of them from memory.
Yeah, Marcus Gorey Jr. is going back to, or not back, but he's going to Troy. Tommy Winton's going back to ETSU where he started his career. Colin Brazel is going to Abilene Christian with his former high school quarterback is also transferring there. He was at a Big Ten school last year. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but they're 2 high school teammates reunited at Abilene Christian. Braylon Harmon to Austin P. I think that's about everyone. And I don't think you said Herb Gray over to UNL.
I did not say Herb Gray.
I think genuinely uncommitted guys still, if anyone's interested. Kellen Lindstrom, edge rusher. Jake Merklinger at quarterback. Versatile lineman Trevor Duncan started as a defensive lineman, transitioned to offensive line, but then medically retired this last spring, has entered the portal. We'll see what that ends back. He's in the portal. Amari Jefferson, I'm very curious what the market looks like for him at wide receiver. Caleb Herring, which, we've heard some reports here and there about schools interested in him, feels like he's definitely a candidate to stay in the SEC or to at least go to a contender elsewhere. Emmanuel Okoye started his career at tight end, moved over to edge rusher. And then the most 2 recent guys to enter, Trey Weary, who is a legacy at Tennessee, and then Caleb Beasley, who's the most recent guy to enter. Those are the only guys remaining off the board. So the majority of them have found their new home, but there are a handful that, including some notable names like a Jake Merklinger, like a Caleb Herring, that are still on the board that we're waiting to see where they go.
There you go. In case you want to stay up to date with all the latest Tennessee football portal news and notes, make sure you are tuned in to RockyTopInsider.com each and every day, and make sure you are following Rocky Top Insider on both Twitter and Instagram as we bring to you the latest news for all those different players that we've been talking about, whether they're incoming guys, whether they're outgoing guys, or whether they are targets. Either way, we'll be talking about them over on RockyTopInsider.com. All right, before we get out of here, while we have a little bit of time, I kind of want to go to you guys for a speed round, if you will, a little bit of a rapid fire thoughts. Where you guys are at with each of the respective Tennessee basketball teams on campus over there, as SEC play is it's certainly underway. I know the men are 4 games into the process. Sylvia, the women are, what is it, about the same, 4 games as well? 5?
4, I think. I think they're 4 now. Maybe they're 5.
4 with a question mark in parentheses. Possibly.
Probably
4.
I think they're just 4 now.
I think it's 4.
Yeah, 4. Okay, I was second guessing myself. Yeah, 12-3, 4-0.
Yeah. So same pace. So I'll go to both of you for just kind of, again, some rapid fire thoughts before we get out of here. But Shump, you saw we got to watch a double overtime thriller last night in the Food City Center. So it was a game that Tennessee really had to come back from. trailing for, I believe, 35 out of the 50 total minutes of game time. And even then, when Tennessee did take the lead with under 6 minutes left in the second half, it was still a battle to get to the finish line, and obviously overtime and then double overtime after that. Nate Mint goes for 23 points, kind of back-to-back solid games that he's certainly put together. Still, I think you can see some noticeable places to improve, but he's put together a little bit of a scoring burst here in the last couple of games. Where are you with this Tennessee basketball team? Just in a couple of quick sentences, what are some of the biggest storylines or talking points that you have moving into the Kentucky game on Saturday afternoon, still right here in Knoxville?
Yeah, I think inconsistency, turnovers continue to plague this team a ton. Really both of those things. And then, but yeah, I thought it was a positive sign last night. Tennessee fights back and finds a way to win. We've seen them struggle to kind of find that counter punch when things have gone wrong this year. Not only does Tennessee come back, it felt like every time Tennessee got the game real close, every time Tennessee tied the game, and then immediately had an answer. So Tennessee just kept on kind of punching on that door and eventually knocked it over. So that's the positive sign. You hope maybe that second half can be a little bit of an inflection point for this team. You mentioned Nate Mint has scored 19 of his 23 points last night in the final 20 minutes of the game. When you think final 10 minutes regulation and 2 overtime, he scored 10 of Tennessee's 19 points in the 2 overtime periods. So some stuff to like there. I won't go quite as far as saying he's turning a corner right now, but he has played better the last couple games. Turnovers continue to be an issue for him too. So Tennessee holding serve at home. They need to keep doing that. After Kentucky, it's 2 challenging road games at Alabama and Georgia that are going to be tough to win either of those. So, it's some positives. Certainly not a polished team right now. Certainly a lot of questions still. A lot of areas Tennessee needs to grow, but remaining in the fight and certainly feel a lot better that they were able to pull out a win against Texas A&M on Tuesday night.
Sylvia, what about a quick report on the Lady Vols? Kim Caldwell's second season. She's got them at 12-3 right now. As you mentioned a second ago, 4-0 in conference play. Correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like there was maybe a midweek bye this week after the win over Arkansas last weekend. They'll travel to Alabama on Sunday at 2:00. Tennessee men's basketball also has an upcoming trip to Alabama next weekend as well. Do they have both Tennessee teams in Tuscaloosa the same weekend, or are my dates getting mixed up?
They don't play Alabama this weekend, do they? The men's?
No, it's Kentucky this weekend for the men's.
Oh, okay. You're right. It's one apart. So men's go down there in 2 weeks. The ladies go down there this weekend. Tell us a little bit just kind of about where this women's basketball team is right now. Same thing to you. What are some of the talking points or storylines around Kim Caldwell's team?
Yeah, I think we'll find out a lot more this Sunday when they play Alabama. They haven't really played anyone in SEC play. They've taken care of business, so I think you have to give them credit for that. Like, they've gone on the road and won 2 games. They've fended off some feisty teams at home and that stuff, and they've blown out teams that they should blow out, but they still haven't really played anyone in SEC play. So is it, hey, Kim Caldwell called it. She said, I want a tough out-of-conference schedule to gear us up for the conference slate, because last year we didn't know who we were until halfway through the SEC play, and by then you're staring at, not the seeding you want in the SEC tournament, not the seeding you want in the NCAA tournament because of your conference record. Maybe it's true. Maybe the lumps they took in out-of-conference play that ended up being really ugly to Louisville and UCLA, and then a narrow loss to an NC State team who ended up not being the best so far. Maybe it's all good in the long run and you're turning a corner and SEC play has arrived and you know what you have as a team, or maybe you're just benefiting from, like I said, you've played 4 teams that you should have beat. Well, Alabama's a top 25 team. It'll be number 20 Tennessee versus number 21 Alabama. You're going on the road. I don't think Alabama's home atmosphere for women's basketball is supposed to be one of the best in the country or anything, but it's still always a challenge to go on the road and win an SEC game. So that is a challenge in itself. I'm curious how they respond to that. Mia Paldo, freshman point guard, just won SEC Freshman of the Week for the second time in her career. She's been fantastic. You would think you'll get Talaysia Cooper back after she was hit in the head with a basketball during shoot around and had to miss the game later that day. So that was a interesting mishap that happened. She said on her Instagram story that she's fine. She's been practicing stuff. So it seems like she'll be back. But then Kanaya Boyd with the high ankle sprain as well has been one of your better defenders. They battled some injury. They battled some sickness and all that stuff. It's winter, so most teams have some illness, going around the locker room. But like I said, it feels like
keep fighting.
Okay, you've keep fighting. You've handled business to this point. Now you have at Alabama, you have against Kentucky, who's really good at home the next Thursday. You go to Ole Miss, who's pretty good under Coach Yo, top 20 team under Coach Yo the next Monday. UConn's right around the corner. You have at South Carolina after that. Like, it's going to start to heat up here, and we'll figure out, okay, have they turned the corner, or is this just kind of what the Lady Vols are this year in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, that was obviously the thing that stood out to me right there, looking at the schedule. 3 straight ranked opponents coming up: at Alabama versus Kentucky, at Ole Miss. You get Mississippi State again after that, a team that you already beat by 10, but then you got to go on the road to UConn. A week later, you go on the road to South Carolina. A week later, you face number 4 Texas, and then you still close out the season with 3 ranked teams at Oklahoma, at LSU, and then home against Vanderbilt. It's just a lot of ranked teams left on the schedule, and I think you're right. Tennessee has, found a way to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat so far in the season. They have lost their 3 ranked games already, but they'll get a chance to kind of pull up some momentum here in this next week or two and see what that can do for them heading into the continuing to head into the conference slate. So seems like a lot going on in Kim Caldwell's world right now.
Yeah, they just need some resume boosting wins. Like your best win right now, which is a good win, is at Stanford by a couple points, and that is a good win. Stanford's going to be a tournament team. They're sitting just outside the polls. I assume they still are. Usually they're in the receiving votes category. Besides that, you just don't have many great wins, and so you're not going to win every SEC game. You're not going to beat UConn every single year. But you just need to find a way to win a few of those, keep your record looking solid, and then have some of those wins to point to, like, hey, playing better basketball by the end of the year than you were at the beginning of the year. And then maybe you can try to fight your way into the conversation, be a top 4 seed, which in women's basketball is so important because that means you get to host the first 2 rounds of the tournament. But right now they're looking like, probably about a 5, 6, or 7 seed in the tournament, which is, they were 5 seed last year. So it would be a theoretical step back, but we'll see what they do once they get in there.
Lots going on in the Tennessee athletics world right now. You can follow it all on RockyTopInsider.com. We've got full coverage of Tennessee men's and women's basketball and, of course, everything that is happening in the portal. Go ahead and subscribe to the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel to find the latest post-game press conferences, podcasts, interviews, anything you could find. It's over at Rocky Top Insider on YouTube, so go ahead and subscribe. And then also make sure you are following each one of our podcasts over on your favorite podcasting network, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon or something else. You can find the Rocky Top Insider network of podcasts wherever you are looking. That's the RTI Press Pass, which is what you're listening to right now. You've got RTI Rim Runner with Ryan Shumpert and Bob Baskerville on Thursdays. You've got RTI Pancakes and Bacons on typically Mondays. Obviously, with the football season sort of in the rearview mirror now, that schedule is a little bit more up in the air. You can always go and see what Kyler and Reed are up to over there. And then, of course, RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe, the Sunday night staple, as they were talking to Pete Nakos about all the portal stuff last week. They've got a great guest on every week. That is Sunday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. sharp on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel. You can also go and check out our great friends over at WATE. They put together a lot of great content, which you can find a lot of that on the WATE 6 Plus Smart TV app. Very easy to download to your smart TV. Go ahead and download it to stay tuned. Stay up to date with all the latest news and especially sports news that are going on in East Tennessee. But aside from that, you can give these 2 guys right here a follow to stay tuned to all the portal conversations. And hey, baseball is right around the corner. I saw Ryan writing about that a little while ago. So you're going to want to make sure to follow Ryan Shumpert at rshump00. That's SCHUMP for all the latest on Josh Elander's first go around as the head coach with the Volunteers. And then, of course, you can follow Ryan Sylvia at Ryan T. Sylvia to stay tuned to Lady Vols, portal coverage, all that sort of stuff over on social media. And I'm Rick Butler at Rick_Butler on social media myself. Guys, have I missed anything on the way out? I'm a little rusty after, a near-death experience last week. I think I hit it all, though.
I think you hit it all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Hey, we'll see you back next week for another edition of the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass. But make sure you're checking out RockyTopInsider.com for all the latest Tennessee news, notes, and coverage. For Ryan Shumpert, for Ryan Sylvia, I'm Rick Butler. Thanks for listening to the RTI Press Pass podcast.